show. I'm Christina Blacker, joining you here from Louisville, and lucky for everyone out there, I have some excellent analysts to join me today. It was a very busy morning as we are 1 week out from the Kentucky Derby. And as you can imagine, with just 7 days left to go until Derby 150, many of the contenders did put in their final works today. We also had quite a few Oaks fillies out on the racetrack. So joining me to help us out and to not only analyze these works, but to talk about the horses as well, Caleb Keller. He's out there live at Churchill Downs right now. Andie Biancone in her element in a stall, it looks like. And Geena Lucille as well, who was out early this morning, keeping an eye on all of the morning training. Caleb, I'll start with you first. As you shift over from Lexington here to Churchill, what are you looking forward to most just this weekend as we kick off Derby week?
Well, I think that the headlining work today was Sierra Leone coming out with the Donovan Mitchell jersey as we are here in Louisville. Donovan Mitchell playing in the NBA playoffs. So a little bit of flash for one of the most impressive lookers physically in terms of this year's Kentucky Derby field. And also, Christina, a new rule where you had to be on site 7 days before the race. So in years past, we could have had this key Saturday where, tracks were holding workouts in Florida, New York for these key preps, but all of them at Churchill today.
Yeah, definitely new policy, and that has dictated these last few days. Andie, what's going on behind you there, and who's joining us on the show? Who's our fifth co-host today?
Well, if you remember Viva LaRed from Keeneland, she ran Wednesday a valiant second in an allowance going 1.5 miles on the turf. She made her way to Churchill Downs this morning too, so I don't have to commute every morning now. And she's soaking up all the sights and smells of Derby City. She's walking around the backside this morning, and she's gonna help us with the show.
Geena, you've been here the last couple of mornings, and I think we're the first one with boots on the ground for us here at Churchill Downs. Have you noticed the atmosphere and the energy in the mornings start to grow with more people out there day by day?
I've noticed the parking has gotten very difficult. But yes, the horses are, when I first got here, it was very quiet. You could hear the birds. And then once those Derby works and Oaks horses come on the track, it is just a flood wave of people. And the horses get a sense of that as well. I've noticed a lot of these horses kind of get up on their toes and start, they know when you're looking at them.
Let's jump right into it. We have several works to show you. So we're going to begin with Sierra Leone and Domestic Product, both from Chad Brown's barn. They worked today in company. As you can see, I'm coming up here together. 5 furlongs in 1 minute and 1 was the time given. And Andie, I'll let you start here. We've got Sierra Leone on the inside, Domestic Product to the outside. And both these horses just continue to impress and have such beautiful strides on them.
Absolutely. We see Sierra Leone's regular exercise rider, Chris Bond, aboard him, and obviously Tyler Gaffleone on Domestic Product. Usually the person on the inside is kind of in charge of setting the pace, but if a horse needs a little extra pressure, they usually go on the inside. And I do believe Sierra Leone seems to be kind of I don't want to say lazy. He's not lazy. He has little blinkers, and I see him gallop in the morning. Sometimes Chris often has to really ask him to get going when they start galloping. So I guess that's why he's on the inside and why Tyler's on the outside with Domestic Product, keeping that pressure on him to keep him engaged. But this work was excellent. Domestic Product, I mean, I think Sierra Leone seemed to gallop out a little better, but Domestic Product was all gas on the outside there.
Yeah, Caleb, I wanted your opinion on this as well as we watch. I mean, Tyler Gaffleone aboard Domestic Product here, his feet are in the dashboard, just trying to hold this horse and slow him down as much as he can. He is full of himself.
I think our assistant Jess said it best, that Sierra Leone looks more like a dragon than a horse. So for the Pokemon fans, this is like the Charizard of this year's Kentucky Derby field. You can understand why he went for $2.3 million. And I think, Christina, if you measured stride length at full extension from tip to tail, I would say that Sierra Leone probably has the longest stride length in this year's Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, Geena, he seems like a horse, Sierra Leone, that once he really gets going, he's like a freight train. He gains momentum with every stride, really drops his body and just uses himself fully with every stride.
Yeah, I spoke with Tyler earlier today, and he doesn't think he has hit all of his gears yet, which gives you goosebumps like from head to toe to think, because when I watch these guys work, I mean, I was just in awe. This horse bellies down, he sinks down about 3 inches and really presses forward. He is so talented, so talented.
Love what we saw from the Chad Brown trainees. Let's switch gears here. Brad Cox had several workers this morning, including his Derby horses, and he worked Encino and Catching Freedom together. So we have another company work coming your way. On the outside, you see Encino. On the inside, we have Catching Freedom, and you can see the riders listed there as well. Florent Giroux aboard Encino on the outside. Geena, I'll let you start with this one as these two kind of join each other up here. Catching Freedom is a horse to me that I just think he does everything right in the mornings as I watch him. He's very forward and puts a lot into his training.
So I've actually been told that he's a little bit on the lazy side because things are just so easy and come natural to him. He's kind of a horse. That's why they have him on the inside today with Encino on the outside. They kind of had to rattle him up with the pony to get him to go. And it was more of just a lazy, like, okay, man, we've got to get to work. We've got to do some work. And where I have to say, Encino absolutely blew me away today. And you guys were talking about stride, like the length of stride with Sierra Leone. Encino, I think it's bigger. I do. I think it's bigger.
Caleb, it's an interesting point just looking at the energy we see from Encino because he's on the quickest turnaround coming off the Lexington.
Yeah, and Encino has the family tree to like the dirt. You know, his dam is a half sister to Street Sense, who of course won the 2007 Kentucky Derby, and a really nice work here. I mean, always kind of staying in front of Catching Freedom. Catching Freedom kind of goes in front basically after the gallop out is over, but Catching Freedom to me is Angel of Empire 2.0. Same trainer, same owner, same path, same races, and also Angel of Empire and Catching Freedom. When they first started as 2-year-olds, they were not the most heralded horses in the Brad Cox barn, but as the racing continued, they turned out to have the most stamina and class, and both turned out to be live contenders.
Let's toss up the next work from the Brad Cox barn, and that's Just a Touch. He actually went solo. Andie, I want to start with you here. Just in general, what do you find that Brad Cox looks for with his workers? Is he looking for faster workers? Is he a more slow tempo? How would you characterize his overall training style?
I feel like he goes, I never see his riders like going all out to get a bullet work or anything. He knows these horses can go fast, so I think he just wants a good, solid effort from them with a good gallop out. You notice his horses do gallop out. They do get wind in them after the wire. You could see this rider really kind of holding this horse just to harness the speed and not go too fast. But an aggressive gallop out, which is very good for stamina.
Another big, strong work there from Just a Touch, 1 minute and 4 for the 5 furlongs. Caleb, with him, I saw something interesting on Twitter the other day, and I think it was Travis Stone maybe pointing it out, how fast the early pace was in the Bluegrass. And he was really the only one that stuck around after being involved with those fractions.
One thing that stuck out about that work, Christina, is the fact that he was working alone. Like when a horse works alone, two things are happening. Number one, the trainer's saying that this horse is very professional, very focused. And number two, sometimes it's because the horse is so fast, the trainer doesn't want another horse in the barn to look them in the eye and affect their confidence. Look at American Pharoah. American Pharoah never had a workmate. Arrowgate rarely had a workmate. So if you're going solo, you have a ton of talent. And in terms of the draw tonight, Christina, the biggest race is for who sits exactly second. Because Florent Giroux is at his best when he's under a tug and sitting in second. And Just a Touch has the speed to get there, but also Johnny Velasquez wants to sit, in my mind, exactly second with fierceness. So the race to sit second, I think, is going to be a really contentious battle there going into the first turn.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that because I think with fierceness too, like you're talking about Johnny Velasquez, that American Pharoah trip, that Justified trip, just right on the outside, stalking the pace, that's ideally, I think, what fierceness needs. And the post position draw really is going to dictate what we get from that later on tonight. Let's jump to another work. West Saratoga was on the track this morning as well for Larry Demerit. He was actually, I think, one of the last ones to train in that very brief window. And from what I saw, I think he might have just been given a 3 furlong time, like a little bit of a blowout type time for him. And he's going to pick it up here as they turn for home. Andie, will let you start with this one. The gray, he carries his head a little high, but I have noticed that he seems to be kind of doing things well within himself.
Yeah, obviously not as aggressive as we saw with Just a Touch, but he looks good. This kind of just looks like a nice 3 furlong maintenance. Get some wind in him, get a little sharpness in him. Obviously, we know he's a horse who likes the track, and he looks like he's moving excellent.
Yeah, Caleb, he's one that seems to be taking those little incremental steps forward. I don't know if it's quite enough. I think we need a big jump from him to really be competitive in this Derby, but he's been right there pretty consistently. And I think he's kind of knocking at the door for a little bit of a breakout performance.
And he just keeps on outrunning his odds for Larry DeMera. He was the first horse to qualify all the way back in September at Churchill of last year. So for him to make it all the way to the Derby is outstanding. And look at his past performances. He's only been a few lengths off the early pace. Sometimes we are surprised at horses that are close to the lead, like the year that like Uncle Si was on the lead. Who would have expected that? So for this horse with the speed, who likes the track, I don't necessarily know if he'll make the actual lead, but if he's brave enough, he might get within a couple lengths of horses like Fierceness and Track Phantom.
Larry DeMera, just a really fascinating story. If you have the time to read a couple of the articles, he's already overcome quite a bit in his life as far as some really significant health challenges, has a great outlook, and has been extremely optimistic as they enter into this Derby season. So we're looking forward to seeing what he does, and just seems to be like someone who's really living in the moment right now, which is beautiful to see. We have a quick little snippet from Endlessly's work yesterday. This isn't the full work, but we did want to share it with you because they have decided that he is going to run. Andie, what's your kind of take on this? We know he's better on synthetic and turf, but how has he been moving over the main track at Churchill?
I think he moves excellent. I think Churchill Downs is the kindest dirt surface for a turf horse, if that makes sense. A lot of horses who are successful in the Kentucky Derby have turf pedigrees or turfy horses, and the long stretch especially helps. But I mean, the Jeff Ruby year after year has proven to kind of be one of our we've seen, all these horses come out of there and do well. Endlessly's performance in the Jeff Ruby was probably one of the most impressive preps, in my opinion. And I'm happy he's going to run for the Roses. Michael McCarthy actually came up to me at the races yesterday and was beaming with excitement. We're running in the Derby. We're doing it. We're going. And I've never seen Michael you never see him get so excited. So I think that's a really positive sign.
Yeah, you don't see that kind of exuberance from him
No.
when he wins a race. We've had some fun kind of pestering him on a lot of our morning shows. One more question for you, Andie, about the track. I've read in the past, and I think it was Mark Cassey that said it, that the composition of the main track at Churchill has a little bit more of like a clay base to it, and that it gives you a little spring. And that is what a turf or a synthetic horse likes. They like that bounce and that little bit of spring over it. Do you find that to be true, or is that something that you're not feeling yourself if you're out there on horses?
I think that's so true. And especially historically, Churchill Downs is a faster track. It's not so deep and sandy. It's got more of that clay. It's got more of that spring. It's a little more shallow. And obviously you see turf horses kind of have to have that tactical little kick and that turn of foot. And I think even the track configuration itself just kind of helps them with the long stretch that they have. They have more to work with.
Caleb, as a handicapper, how do you approach a horse like Endlessly in the Kentucky Derby?
Well, we bring up the idea that some of these horses with turf pedigree and looks have done well, like Barbaro and Animal Kingdom, except they were the absolute star workers of that year. Barbaro was the absolute standout, and Animal Kingdom, really for the clockers, forget about that 30-1 morning line. He really was the star of 2011. So I'm not getting those type of vibes from Endlessly, but for a horse that crosses the wire first in the Jeff Ruby, and then they immediately say they're going to the turf, for them to reroute and get the full blessing of the trainer, I think Michael McCarthy was the one that was originally pumping the brakes on the Derby, but you only get one chance. The buyer is strong enough to be a competitor. No race has been stronger than the Jeff Ruby the last 2 years, a runner-up and a win here in the race. So I can't blame him. I think he's going fine enough, but not necessarily, of course, a Barbaro or an Animal Kingdom.
Yeah, and I think for the folks at home, if you have the time, that work, that little piece that we showed you yesterday, I believe that was either his fourth or his fifth work here at Churchill. They brought him over here quite a while ago. And I've watched some of the prior works, and they didn't look great. I do think he's shown progression. I think a couple works back, he was struggling to keep up with a workmate. You could tell that he wasn't really getting over the track, but the added time really has helped. And maybe that's just him getting back over the race. I mean, he ran huge in the Jeff Ruby. Maybe he needed the added time really to get back to himself. But I've seen in looking back at some of those prior drills that he does seem to be getting better. Do we have Geena back? We've had some technical difficulties. Geena, welcome back.
Hi, I've missed quite a bit. I have no idea what you guys were talking about. I couldn't hear anything, so I had to jump out and jump back on,
We're glad to have you back. We were just talking about Endlessly, actually, and now that they've confirmed that he is going to run in the Derby. And I was saying that I've watched some of his works in the last couple of weeks, and there were times when he did look like he was struggling with the track a little bit, but I think he's progressed quite a bit. Have you seen anything from him in the mornings, and are you thumbs up, thumbs down in terms of how he's handling the dirt?
I think that's just such a great assessment because, of course, when you first see them, and this track is completely different, and he does seem to be getting over it better. Not as great as some of the other ones that we've seen, but he is definitely getting over it better.
Yeah, we're seeing some progression, I think, with Endlessly. Let's jump to another runner, Tio Password we have for you. The first horse that has received the invitation along the Japanese road to the Kentucky Derby to accept it and to come. So we have two Japanese runners. We have Forever Young, your winner of the UAE Derby, and then this horse, Tio Password. I did notice that, Andie, he got a little warm out there this morning, but it was his first day and his first jog here. So talk us through that experience a little bit. What's it like for a horse, let alone an international horse, to come to a place like Churchill or any track for the first time?
Completely different. It's like you're coming from the countryside to like the busiest highway you can find. You can see the riders riding him long, trying to just hack him around. He's got company around him just to give him some confidence, something to follow. But anyways, like Japanese style training, European style training versus American style training is very different. You see they have him following his company. You couldn't do that with an American horse. You'd get run off with in like 2 seconds because they would just want to pass. Like, I often say galloping a horse on a track in America, it's like driving a car on a freeway that's afraid of other cars and has no brakes. So it's really just like, but this is good for this horse. The Japanese contenders often take a long time on the track, spend 40 minutes walking them around, and you could see the difference. This horse just being ridden long and getting kind of hacked around versus the American horses getting ridden short and grabbing the bridle and, having their works today. It's very different.
And Andie, Tio Password, the odds came out overseas, and Tio Password's like 150 to 1. So the odds internationally are telling us this horse has like no shot to win the race. But with the Japanese that set up Rich Strike, I was sitting there mid-stretch, had a great view of the Derby with Rich Strike. And when Crown Pride and Summer is Tomorrow, the two Japanese horses, were coming past first time, they were literally drag racing there to set up that pace. And as Andie alluded, the biggest difference in the Japanese pattern is the fact that the Japanese just stay on the track for a really long time. Like when Lonnie, the big gray, came to Louisville, people could not believe he just kept on taking lap after lap after lap, like 10 laps in the morning, whereas the Americans usually take just about 1 or 2.
Great to see from Tio Password. Thanks for taking it for a second, guys. I had someone knocking on the door here at the hotel. I need like a little do not disturb sign. Let's switch gears and talk about the fillies. We had some nice works yesterday from quite a few of the fillies in the Oaks. Tarifa and Jin went in company. They went 5 furlongs and 59 and 2. We can pull that up for you any second now and give some attention to the fillies. Okay, so here they are. And as you can see, we're going to blast off pretty quickly there. Andie, have you, I'm sure, experienced that as soon as a pony turns you loose, you get some that just really know what's coming up next and go for it?
Yeah, usually if you've got one that needs to be taken to the pole with a pony, you know that they're quite aggressive and difficult to hold to get to the pole. So that pony being there, helping, making sure you don't get run off with before the pole, and then obviously just letting her go do her thing. But yeah, definitely very keen. And you can see the rider on the outside not trying to get next to her, because if those horses get head and head, they go way too fast. So sometimes the outside rider, your job is to stay with the inside horse, because the inside horse is doing the pace. So you don't want to add gas to the fire by going head and head too early. So sometimes sitting half a length and not putting too much pressure on until you get your early fractions established, and then coming together in the stretch is kind of the way to go.
Yeah. What about Andie, for the exercise riders, for the jockeys? This is a really fine line. You're trying to hit a certain time. You don't want to go too fast. You don't want to go too slow. What's the pressure like for one of the riders in these final works for the Derby or the Oaks?
It's insane, because 1 second off and you mess up the whole work. So a lot of these riders, some trainers really like to have radios. My dad's a big radio guy, so he kind of can control the pace exactly. But some riders even have watches, and you have to really learn how to click your watch correctly between pole to pole. But super important. Every second literally counts. You could mess up the whole work in 1 second.
59 and 2, Tarifa on the outside, Jin on the inside. That was a work from yesterday. Those fillies getting ready for the Kentucky Oaks the first Friday in May. Another Kentucky Oaks worker from yesterday to share with you is Into Champagne. Into Champagne with a nice 5 furlong work. She went a minute flat. Here's a look at her back again on the, my eyes aren't good enough. I think it's at 26. We'll update you on that as soon as we pull the graphic back in. But as we begin this work, Caleb, she's definitely on the bridle, on the engine, wants to do more, and very forward in her training.
And I thought going back a couple of works ago here at Churchill Downs, Into Champagne had a sneaky, really good move. So going to be long odds in the Kentucky Oaks, but I like how this one was glued to the rail there in the turn. I think that, when you're a long shot, you got to be trying to save every penny. You can't be affording to stay out there in the middle part of the track and take the wide route around. So if you are a long shot, being able to glue to that rail and get around the corner seamlessly, I think is going to be a nice benefit to have come race time.
Nice fluid lead change. I think that's Julien Leperoux in the saddle. He'll be aboard for the Kentucky Oaks. And Andie, he's just able to sit quiet here, maybe shake the reins a little bit, deep stretch, just to ask her for a little bit more.
She just looks perfect, so relaxed, so nice, not being rank, has great energy. As Caleb alluded to earlier, horses who work by themselves, usually they don't need the pressure of other horses. They get too keen, too aggressive. They'll go too fast in company. So just that she was able to have this nice, easy work on her own. She looked so happy, ears pricked in the turn, seemed like she got a nice deep breath and finished up well. So this is pretty much everything you'd want to see.
Into Champagne, a nice work yesterday morning here at Churchill Downs. Again, Julien Leperoux in the saddle. As far as some other horses to take a look at, I think we have one more work for you for the Kentucky Oaks. Manama Gold, another one that put in a pretty fast work. I think the track's been pretty quick the last couple of days. I know that we didn't get a chance to show you the door knock in West Society. That's coming to you tomorrow. They went very quick today. Here's a look. We're just going to circle back. There she is. Okay, so this was happening at about the same time. You could see Into Champagne for just a second there in the shot. But Manama Gold for Todd Pletcher is on the outside here, and she's got a workmate setting the tempo for her, Andie, along the inside. Looks like the rider on the workmate just trying to anchor down and start off easy for a nice even tempo with this group.
Yes, and you can see they kind of felt comfortable with the pace because he didn't even try to sit half a length. I'm talking about the outside rider. Oh, here he is. He's kind of sitting half a length over here, keeping the tempo with the inside horse, like you said, Christina. But this just seemed like another good, easy work as well.
4 furlongs, 48 and 3. We're talking about the UAE Derby winner and now the Oaks winner here as well, Caleb. And she's another horse. I've watched her a little bit. I think she's coming on day by day. I'm not sure that we've seen the absolute, best from her in the mornings yet, but I think each and every day she's improving.
And Evelyn Benoit has to be really proud. So, Star Guitar standing in Louisiana, and then here's a horse that wins the UAE Oaks, and very similar to Teo Password, just 2 starts, and both of those are wins. So every year it condenses down. Like we saw Big Brown with just 3 starts. Then we saw Mage with just 3 starts. Now we're getting to 2 starts for Teo Password and this horse as well. So the most inexperienced, but a lot of talent. And we have seen Pletcher in years past take horses from the UAE Oaks, comes to Churchill and run the first time under his care.
Andie, could she still be learning a little bit out there too? It looked like the rider had to flag the stick just a little bit on the gallop out just to help her corner for a few strides there.
Yeah, she did seem like she was not really. She looked a little bit green getting around there. Not my favorite sign, honestly. You really want to see them gallop out good, strong, and I guess once he gets her attention, she kind of gallops out here past the company to where she pulls up. But yeah, not my favorite of the works we've seen.
That's one thing that I have noticed this weekend and in years past, how much emphasis Todd Pletcher puts on the gallop out, Andie. I mean, we saw a huge gallop out from Fierceness in his work yesterday. I think we've seen that pretty consistently from his horses. It almost feels like their work doesn't, I know it starts, but the heavy lifting of a work starts kind of with that last 16th of a mile and then through the gallop out.
Absolutely. I think Pletcher would rather, likes to see a 49 easy with a good gallop out. Like the gallop out is essential for him, as is for Brad Cox. But it's funny, you see trainers like Lucas who don't gallop out at all. You see him put these bullet works with no gallop out. But everyone has to perform. But yeah, for me, that was most. It was almost out versus one pick on it.
So that does wrap up the works that we have for you from this morning. Again, Dornoch West Society, they also worked today. We're efforting that footage. We'll try to show it to you tomorrow. And we're looking forward to Society Man, I should say. We're looking forward to seeing a little bit more of that training tomorrow morning on Sunday as well. It's a big day today, though. So we have a little bit of a break right now, but it's opening night, Downs After Dark. Derby Through the Decades is the theme. If you are going to join us out there for our coverage, first post is at 6 o'clock Eastern. We'll start at 5 o'clock Eastern just to sort of set the table for you. We will also be busy with racing from Santa Anita at that time. So kind of jumping back and forth coast to coast. And as you can see from the graphic here, full team coverage all week. And then especially tonight as we begin, we also draw for the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks this evening. That's going to happen in between races 3 and 4. So we'll have the first couple of races to get going on opening night, and then we'll head into the paddock for the Derby draw right after race number 3. Before we do let you go, we are going to give some selections for later on this evening. It'll be a late one if anyone is going to stay up with us for racing. I think post time for the finale tonight is 11:17 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to jump to the feature for my selection. Race 9 is the Roxalana, and I like Speedy Traveler in there, the 3-horse for Phil Bauer. She's so fast. She's shown that. Her last couple of efforts have come over and off track, but I don't think that she's dependent on that. And I think she's just quicker than the other horses in the field. So I'll go with Speedy Traveler to remain undefeated as she takes on stakes competition for the first time tonight. But Andie, I understand you like a different horse in the Roxalana. Tell us who you like.
I'm going to go try for a price horse. That is going to be the number 4 Positano Sunset. We just has a win at Churchill Downs. We know she likes the track, and I think the way the track is really suits to her running style. The closer, there's a ton of pace. Obviously, the Traveler's going to go to the front, and there's some other pace there. So I kind of think Positano Sunset gets.
All right, the 4-horse Positano Sunset in race 9, the Roxalana for Andie. I'm going to go with Speedy Traveler in there. Caleb, are you focusing on the feature, or are you going to go elsewhere for a selection, an early selection tonight?
Well, I'm going to stick in the latter half of the card in race 8. And one feature that they've had on opening nights here in years past is the old mile and a quarter race. So everybody get fired up for the Kentucky Derby starting gate location. And when I first looked at race 8, I was looking at the one just basking being an Arrogate. The Arrogates we know can run forever. But then the more I looked at it, I thought the 5 could set a really slow pace in here for Ben Colebrook. Comes out of the same race with the 1. That was a loaded race. Juddmonte had one of their best young fillies break their maiden at Keeneland in that race. So I like the 1's distance, but the more I looked at it, the 5 for Ben Colebrook in race 8 has a chance to set a slow tempo and maybe just keep on going.
I love it. Race 8, the 5 from Caleb for Ben Colebrook, and he's had such a great Keeneland, looking to continue that momentum over here at Churchill. Does Vive have anything she wants to say before we sign off, Andie?
Oh my gosh, she's just this. Is this what it's like to have a kid? Because the whole time, if I'm not scratching her ear, she's pawing. I'm like, please be quiet. Like she's like, get off your phone. She started licking my iPad. I'm done with her. She's canceled.
She's spoiled in the best way, as you can see.
She's canceled.
Thanks for joining us for our Kentucky Derby training show. We hope you enjoyed all of our analysis. We know we lost our co-host with Geena Lucille and her technical difficulties. Hopefully we'll get her back for you tomorrow. But for the rest of us, for Andie Biancone, for Caleb Keller, I'm Christina Blacker, for Vive, we're signing off, and we will see you in a couple of hours for opening night